So here's a review of the Razer Blade 16, and this one's been a long time coming. This is the longest laptop I've ever had in my possession that I'm actually reviewing. I bought this when it just came out back in April, and what's going to make this special is that a lot of other reviewers don't have access to, as I have two of them. This one has a 5080 with the Ryzen 365, and this one is the 5090 with the Ryzen 370. So these are the different Ryzen AI chips, the different GPUs. So really interested to see how these two compare, and if you need to spend a lot of money to get the 5090 along with that Ryzen 370 AI 9, that chip, you know what I'm talking about. I hate that naming convention. Anyway, let's get right into it. So first, usually I will start off with the build and the design, but I got to do things a little bit differently this time. I have to talk about all the software / hardware issues people have been having with this laptop. A lot of reviews from channels that I have a lot of respect for have not been liking this laptop or have had a lot of issues with theirs. And you know what? I have too. I did experience that infamous trackpad issue that plagued a lot of what I think is early units. And it wasn't just me. It was a lot of people. Actually, both of these laptops had that issue. And if you don't know what it is after a while, the trackpad would become unresponsive and it won't work. And unfortunately, it's not software. It is a hardware issue. So you have to send it into Razer for repairs. And thankfully, they were able to get mine serviced, and a lot of other people who I spoke to on Reddit fairly quickly. So I guess I'm kind of happy with that, but it seemed like it was pretty widespread. I mean, if you go on Reddit, it's getting a lot of traction. If you're having that issue, you just got to reach out to Razer, and hopefully they can resolve it quickly, which sucks. I hate having to start a video like this, but I do need to mention that. But thankfully, since I got mine back, I've had no issues. But this other 5080 unit did start to see that trackpad issue again. So now I need to send it back to Razer once again. This time I'm going to push them harder and try to get a replacement instead of a repair this time. I want to see how that goes, and I'll probably leave a pinned comment to see how my customer experience goes with this particular Razer Blade 16. Anyway, let's get on with the rest of the video. If you're interested in this laptop, I'm going to have links down below. Razer made a decision to only sell this on Razer.com. It's a way for them to avoid the extra tariff costs. They could just sell it directly to you instead of having to pay a middleman like Best Buy, Newegg, B&H, etc. So it's not the best thing in the world, but at least they didn't really raise the prices too much in relation to these tariffs. And I will have links down below. These are affiliate links, but I'm not going to let any of that affect what I need to say about this laptop. So let's just get right into it. So let's get into the build and the design. Oh my gosh. Wow. Razer really did it. This and the ROG G16 are probably the two best built gaming laptops, if not laptops in general, out there. I love this aluminum build. It is a very high quality CNC milled aluminum, and it feels fantastic. Yes, there's a little bit of flex in the center, but it really isn't that bad. Actually, it's barely noticeable at all. And I love this black color, and it is an actual black, and it looks fantastic. And it does get a little bit of fingerprints. There is some kind of fingerprint resistant coating on it compared to all the laptops that I've tested out. This one should be seeing a lot more fingerprints, but you're not really experiencing that here, so that's good to know. And then let's just take a look at the dimensions of this laptop. Look how skinny this laptop is. It is incredibly thin. It is quite a feat, to be honest. And as you can see, since I've had this laptop as my main laptop, it is going to show some marks and some signs of wear and tear. So this is what a laptop would look like that's been used for about 6 months. And I take kind of good care of my products. I don't baby it too much, but I'm not aggressive with it either. And you can see that the paint's starting to chip off here. That is very normal, and especially where the charging port is. But anyway, back to how thin this laptop is. You could tell just by looking at this USB Type-C ports, which both support USB 4 here, a headphone jack. I gotta talk about this USB port in a second, and this is pretty much deal breaker for me. I'll get there in a second when I flip it around, and let's just do that now actually. So on the other side, you are getting a full HDMI port, another USB point A, and a SD card slot. So I did say I want to talk about this USB 4 port. I mean, it is fast, it's amazing, but both of them are only connected to the iGPU. So If you want to run this through dedicated GPU mode, it is impossible on this laptop, and that is insanely frustrating for me. I mean, thankfully, a lot of my monitors, in fact, all of my monitors here support FreeSync Premium, which I guess is better, but no, I'd rather go straight to the dedicated GPU. I'm always concerned about like latency and all that stuff and loss in frames, but when I get to the performance, that's really not the case. So maybe it's fine, but I just wish one of the ports was connected to the dedicated GPU. That's just my preference. I'm just worried less about bottlenecks when that's the case. So big issue for me. If you don't even know what I'm talking about, then don't even bother. Don't even bother researching it. You'll be fine. Maybe I'm just being picky. But for those who do know, just be aware of that. All right. So I've been kind of bouncing around a bit. This Razer logo, I think it needs to go. In 2025, this bright green thing, it looks like a toy green. Yes, it does illuminate when it's on, and that does look cool, but I just wish it was black when it's not. All the laptops are able to offer RGB without having this green logo here, which I don't know. I'm ready for it. Personal preference. I don't want to spend too much time on it. Let's move on. So let's turn it around, and there's a lot of ventilation here, which is good. I mean, for such a thin laptop, this thing is able to push a lot of power. As thin as it is able to push 40 watts of the CPU consistently and 130 watts on the GPU, as what I showed here in MSI Afterburner. And there's a new version of MSI Afterburner. I couldn't get the regular on-screen display working like I typically could, and I just want to get this video out. But anyway, I was still able to view what I needed to view from it. Fan noise is still a thing, and I also did say this year that most gaming laptops are a lot more quiet than they were last year, and this one isn't going to do that because of how thin this entire laptop is. So just be aware that this laptop is going to be a little bit louder than normal unless you use like the silent or the balance profile. But for all my testing, I've been using just a performance profile, and I messed around with some of the overclock settings. It didn't make too much of a difference, so I just decided to stick to performance. But anyway, I'm jumping ahead. I'll get to performance a little bit later on. Okay, so now let's open up this laptop, and this is where Razer at least claim that they improved. The new keyboard does feel better. I'm not going to say it's the best keyboard out there, but it is not one of the worst keyboards anymore like it was before. So I'm happy we're at least getting a decent keyboard now. The travel is much improved. There's barely any wiggle or wobble on the keys. So that's kind of cool. Oh, speaking of wobble, a lot of people always complain about like some of the ROG laptops where they have like a wobble on the hinge. This one doesn't really have that so much. It's showing up a little bit more in camera. But in real life, it's not something you'll ever notice. It's way better than the G16, which a lot of people really don't like. So just keep that in mind. All right, moving on. The trackpad. This is probably one of the best trackpads on Windows, and I absolutely love it. And then here on the side, you're getting some speaker grills. Let's do a speaker test. There's a lot you could do in Synapse to try to get this to sound a little bit better, and some people have. I've been okay with just leaving it at this default setting. The speakers aren't that bad, but still, nothing as good as the Razer Blade 18. And moving on. All right, so the display. There's some really cool stuff about this display that I haven't seen anybody else cover. If you go to the main display settings, yeah, you can lock it to 60 hertz because it's a battery mode. Here's what's even better. When you switch it to 240 hertz, the screen doesn't go blank like a lot of other screens do. And you can do the dynamic refresh rates. So Windows will cycle between 48 hertz to 240 hertz. So you can keep it in 240 hertz mode all the time, whether you're in battery mode or when you're plugged in, and you're still going to get pretty good battery. Honestly, in day-to-day use, I haven't noticed much of a difference in terms of battery when using this laptop with that 240 hertz with the dynamic refresh rate. So that's been really nice to have, and it just makes the laptop seem so zippy. This is the same OLED display that they used last year. It's a great display. It's fantastic. It gets 400 nits, really high in the Adobe RGB range, which is nice. HDR looks great, though there is no type of VESA certification, so you have to play around and mess around with the HDR settings to get things to look right. But once you do that once, then you'll just be fine. Unlike ROG laptops in general, especially the G16, since that has a VESA certified display, a lot of games just automatically configure the HDR settings to look right for that. This you have to do manually. It's something to keep in mind. But overall, one of the best screens out there. I am at the level right now where I am asking for a brighter screen. If you want to take this laptop outside, Even in the shade, it's unusable, which sucks, and especially because of how glossy it is. Now, I love glossy screens when I'm inside. It looks cleaner. There's less of a dirty screen effect. Things do look sharper. But the moment there's any glare, any lights, or anything like that, this display does start to fall apart. So with the ROG G16, it does have like a semi-matte coating on it. Still fairly glossy, but at least it did something. But this does look sharper than that screen, so you gotta just kind of pick your poison here. Maybe next year we'll start to get tandem OLED screens, which will give us hopefully up to 1,000 nits of total brightness when you're outside. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. And also in terms of gaming, because it's OLED, you're getting that instant response time and things just move incredibly fast and fluid. And on top of that, because it is OLED, like I mentioned, the blacks are black and the whites are white. So you get the best contrast out there. And there really is nothing else like it. I have been messing around with some of the mini LED displays this year. And while, yes, they do get brighter, once you're in a control lit environment, the Razer still packs a bigger punch, even though it can't get up to 1,000 nits. Those blacks compared to like the bright whites are more impactful than 1,000 nit display, but doesn't have the same contrast ratio, if that makes any sense. But overall, yep, this is a good display. The only thing I really want and what I'm expecting next year is for us to get more brightness. All right, moving on. So in terms of the battery, this is why you would get this laptop over like the Razer Blade 18 or any of those other laptops with the Intel Core Ultra 9 HX chips, the 275HX or the 285HX. Those, don't matter what you do, would only last like 3 hours because it requires 45 watts just to run Windows normally, just to do basic tasks. This can do the job in sometimes 5 watts. And as you can see right now, I'm only using 3 watts, but then once I start doing stuff on Windows, it'll go up to like 8 watts, 9 watts, which is crazy. And then when I'm just idle, it'll slowly just start to go back down to 4 watts, which you don't get on most other laptops. And this is where AMD's chip really shines. This is understated how awesome this is, that you can actually run Windows without requiring a lot of power. Razer does some things though where they slow things down a lot. And I know some people have complained about that. When you're on battery, the only option you have is balance. You don't have access to any of these other settings, so you can't make it silent. You can't ask for more performance. Whatever Razer wants to give you is what they'll give you. So at the end of the day, if you're not doing anything crazy on this laptop, you can get up to 8 hours, maybe 9 hours of battery and be comfortable. You can't do that with most other gaming laptops. The good thing about this Ryzen 9 AI 370 chip and also the 365 I have over there is it's very versatile. It gets powerful when it needs to, but then it can still just sip power when it needs to. But even though it gets powerful, it just won't come close to those gigantic, thicker, and heavier laptops. So let's just get into some of the performance then while we're at it. So since I was talking about the CPU, let me start off with that CPU profile, which came up from 3D Mark, and I love this test. Not much reviewers use it, but I really, really like it. So let me explain how this works. It runs the same benchmark 6 times. 1 using all of its threads, then 16 threads, then 8 threads, 4 threads, 2 threads, and then 1 thread. So let's just look at the max threads really quickly. As you should probably expect, this is not where this chip shines, but those thicker and heavier laptops will do better, and they do. When you go down to 16 threads, same thing. When you go down to 4 threads, 2 threads, and even 1 thread, they start to be very similar. So single-threaded activity is reserved more for just regular Windows tasks, which is kind of what you saw me doing when I was just using the multitasking and just kind of like just going through Windows. Single to 2 threads, even 4 threads sometimes. So not a big deal. But when you start to ask this for a lot, that's when those thicker and heavier boys come in. But this is a gaming laptop. What does it mean for gaming laptops? So let's get into it. So let's start off with the Steel Nomad stress test. So this is a test I started using because not only is it a good representation of what actual games are going to be like, and don't worry, I'm going to do benchmarks of real games too, I promise. This test does 2 things. It shows how well this laptop performs on this test, which I said translates very well into actual games, but I'm also running this 20 times in a row. And if the performance drops, then it's more than likely the temperatures. With the 5080 model, I start off with 47 FPS and I end with like 46.82 FPS, so not much of a drop there, like 1 frame. With the 5090, I start off with 55 and then I end with 54. So again, I lose 1 frame after like running this test, which takes about 20 minutes. So I haven't really noticed it throttling at all either, which is awesome. But then when you start comparing it to some of the bigger boys out there, you can see that it just can't compete. But this particular Razer Blade 16 has a trick up its sleeve. If you get the cooling pattern, which I do have, but I haven't been using it because it's just a little bit too loud for me. It's not worth the extra gains I'm getting, but there is gains to be having. Look at that. I'm getting almost 62 FPS, which is not too far off from some of these thicker and heavier gaming laptops. Look at the Legion 7, which is the most powerful 16-inch laptop I've ever tested. And you know what? It's only a few frames. So with this thin and light laptop, if you want more out of it, you have the option. Okay, so I did promise some real games. What I really want to focus on here is a few things. How does the 5080 laptop compare to the 5090 laptop? Because this is not a full performance system. You're only getting 130 watts out of the GPU, where the 5090 wants 150 to 175 watts. So you're losing about 13% performance compared to some of the bigger guys out there. That could be okay for you, or you might want one of the bigger guys instead. The good thing about Windows is we have choices. So at 4K, you're getting 43 FPS at Avatar Frontiers, and this is ultra settings, the max you could possibly get. If you start playing around with settings, you can probably get something that's more playable for you. And as you can see, it compares pretty closely to the RTX 5080 laptops. So that's something to keep in mind. But if you're looking at the 5080 on the Razer Blade 16, you go down to 36 FPS. So there's actually an argument to be made for going with the 5090, even though it is a lot more expensive. And also with the ROG Zephyrus G16, I had that in a 5080, and you can see the difference between the Razer Blade 5080 and the G16 5080. You are going to get more of an uplift with the Razer Blade. It's able to push more power to the GPU, so it just is what it is. When you go down to 1440p, some of those other thicker and heavier laptops will start to show its muscles a little bit more, because that's when you start utilizing the CPU more. And those laptops do have more powerful CPUs, but then as I mentioned, you can't do anything with those other than use it plugged in. And then at 1080p, kind of the same story here. Look at Black Myth Wukong, and this is one of my favorite games to test because, man, it's such a pretty game. I stopped testing in frame generation. I decided I don't like it, so I don't like playing with it, so I'm not going to test in it. If you guys want me to test with frame gen, then let me know. I'll continue to do so. But anyway, so 4K, things kind of scale nicely based off, in a way, my expectations. Going from the Zephyrus G16 all the way up to if you just wanted to use a desktop instead. I just wanted to throw that in there just to show that there is still much better gains to be had with a desktop. But I understand desktops are not for everyone. Maybe you can start to decide, hey, maybe I'll just get the cheapest Razer Blade 16 and then get a desktop, and then I'll be covered in both areas. So just another option for you. If you wanted to max out on the RTX 5090, these newer games that utilize ray tracing and newer rendering techniques, the Razer Blade 16 5090 with only running 130 watts is handling itself pretty well compared to some of the other laptops that push a full 175 watts. So now it makes a lot of sense why when this laptop came out, NVIDIA chose to use this as the review samples going out to all their tech reviewers, because you're getting incredible performance in such a thin and light package, which, you know what, hasn't been possible in the 5 years or so that I've been a gaming laptop enthusiast. So man, things have come a long way, and I'm really happy about that. And with Cyberpunk, same story here. It's doing incredibly good. And with Cyberpunk, using these maxed out settings that I use, none of these laptops are playable at 4K. The only one is a 4080 desktop, and if you were to get a 50 series desktop, then it's finally playable. So let's just look at QHD. I mean, and when you look at that, again, similar to what happened with Black Myth, they all scaled pretty well, where some of the 5090s are doing better, like the Razer Blade 18 and the Legion 7. Those two perform better than any other laptops I've tested this year. But I mean, let's just focus on the Razer Blade 16. It's hanging in there compared to those other laptops that pushed a full 150 to 175 watts. But where those bigger laptops really start to show is in some of the older titles. In Horizon Zero Dawn, you are getting more of an uplift when you go with one of the thicker and heavier 5080s or 5090s. And then same thing with Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Since I've showed you so many games, what I started doing with Shadow of the Tomb Raider, since by now you kind of have an idea of what to expect, of what performance is going to be like, since I've been collecting data for so many laptops since I started doing YouTube, I just figured I would just show the progression of performance uplifts with Razer Blade laptops throughout time. Things have gotten a lot better, man. So if you're holding on to one of those older Razers and you've been thinking about upgrading, now might be the time. All right, and last I want to look at Cinebench because I am comparing the 365 to the 370. That's the AMD chips. In single core, you're not really getting much of an uplift. It might just be unit to unit variances. You are getting a bit of an uplift on the multi-core, which might be more useful for things like editing videos and stuff like that, but it's not really going to be present in games. And honestly, not much of a difference. All right, so there's a lot going on with those charts. And one thing I'm just going to end the video with is just what it's been like to use this as a laptop. And this has been pretty much my main laptop. Most of my videos have been made with this. It is great. I do notice that there are some performance differences when it comes to video editing, especially editing on this giant monitor, which uses a lot of resources. It's essentially two 4K monitors combined together. So it's essentially pushing 8K. But when I'm just using this laptop alone, in most situations, I'm not able to tell the difference. I don't do anything other than gaming and video editing that would really stress this system out. And this is perfect. And the fact that I can put this in a backpack, it's thin and light. The charge is not incredibly enormous like some of the other ones. And I can fully run this laptop through USB-C. You do lose a lot of performance in terms of gaming, but it's still possible. You just get more versatility out of a laptop like this compared to the thicker and heavy ones, and that's why I've chose to use this one. So the only thing that I'm a little bit reserved about is in recommending it is some of those issues with Razer hardware. Thankfully, their support has been pretty good at taking care of it. I know Razer does not have the best reputation when it comes to dealing with issues like this, but they really need to get better now. If they're not going to be selling their laptops in regular retail stores, then they need to get a heck of a lot better. Thankfully, the experience I've had with them has been pretty good. And I don't know, you would think me like using this laptop for like 4 to 5 months, I would have like some unique takes and things that I've noticed with it, but no, everything's just been performing pretty well. Everything's been working as expected. I haven't had much issues. I mean, there's a regular AMD issues that are prevalent here that are just typically not on Intel chips, but that is getting better. Razer does push out a lot of updates. This might sound weird, but to me, this is the laptop of the year because of how powerful it is, how thin it is, how beautiful it is in terms of the build and the design, and just in terms of everything coming together. There isn't really anything else like this. I would like to say that the ROG G16 is a contender, and it is. But when you look at the performance, it's not able to keep up with this. This, in some games, you're getting pretty close to the full 5080 or 5090 performance as those thicker and heavier laptops. And then if you wanted more, you could get that cooling pad like I mentioned, so you do get the best of both worlds, or all worlds, I should say. So I do love this laptop, but I am going to sell both of these because I need money to buy new other laptops to review. So if you guys are interested in either of these, I can probably give you guys a good deal. I'll try to cut this part out if both of them are sold. But if you want to buy them yourself, I do have affiliate links down below if you want to help out the channel. And if you guys really, really, really want to help out the channel, you can probably subscribe because I'm almost at 10,000 subs. As of right now, I'm at like 9,800. So I'm almost there. Please help me out. Help me get there. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one. Bye.